My mother is obsessed with me having kids. So much so, she was willing to destroy my body, my career, and my sanity just to make sure I gave her grandchildren. Growing up in Austin, Texas, I used to think my mom, Gloria, was just eccentric, maybe even old-fashioned. But by the time I was 9 years old, I understood what she really was: a woman who believed her daughters existed to breed. She called it preparing for God's blessing. Every afternoon after school, she'd make me and my older sister Camila put on these weighted pregnancy simulation vests, 20 pounds of rice sacks strapped to our torsos while we waddled through breathing drills, watched grainy childbirth videos, and practiced nurturing instincts with these creepy dolls that screamed if you didn't cradle them just right. If we said our backs hurt, she added more weight. If we cried, she told us real women didn't whine during labor. Camilla leaned in. She'd rub her fake belly and hum lullabies, talking to it like there was actually a baby in there. "Mom says my womb's gonna be a sanctuary," she'd whisper proudly. "I'm going to be a giver of life." I wanted to throw up every time I heard her say it. Me? I spent every fake pregnancy dreaming of escape. I stuffed my dolls under the couch, skipped breathing drills by hiding in the pantry, and taught myself to fake contractions just to end the training sessions early. But my mom never gave up. By the time Camilla turned 16, she was begging to be a surrogate for one of Mom's friends at church who couldn't conceive. At 18, she signed a contract with a couple from Atlanta, and Mom threw her a huge party. Not for graduating high school. No. For starting her divine path as a mother to the world. The party banner said, "Our Camila, a miracle in motion." I stood in the corner while strangers hugged her, crying over how selfless she was. Someone asked what I planned to do with my life. I said, "Apply to law school." The woman smiled politely and said, "Oh, that's practical." Camilla gave birth to twins that year, and when she came home from the hospital, Mom paraded her around the neighborhood like she'd won a Nobel Prize. "Look at my girl. Look what her womb can do." Meanwhile, I volunteered at women's clinics, wrote essays on reproductive autonomy, and applied for law programs with a focus in bioethics. But none of that mattered to Mom. "A wasted uterus," she'd tell her church friends. All those perfect genes going nowhere. And Camilla? She didn't just agree. She believed it. That's when I knew I couldn't just walk away from this family. I'd have to fight my way out. By the time Camilla turned 23, she had carried 4 pregnancies for 4 different couples. Each time she returned from the hospital, paler, thinner, more fragile. But Gloria only saw the glory. "My baby is a miracle factory," she'd beam to anyone who'd listen. "Just look at her. So generous, so obedient to God's plan." Camilla couldn't walk for long without limping. Her hips cracked when she sat down. She had chronic infections and once fainted from anemia in the middle of church. Her hair thinned until Mom bought her wigs to match her glow. But whenever I tried to talk to her, really talk to her, Camilla would just smile with these glassy, devotional eyes and say, "This is what I was made for, Izzy. My body is a vessel for hope. Why can't you understand that?" Because I did understand. That was the problem. Camilla wasn't just brainwashed. She was broken. Conditioned since we were kids to believe that pain equaled purpose, that pregnancy was penance and paradise rolled into one. And my mother? She was the high priestess of this cult dressed up as motherhood. Gloria didn't care that I had just finished a dual JD MPH program in Washington, D.C. She didn't care that I worked at an advocacy center helping women get out of abusive reproductive arrangements, that I testified before the state senate about coerced surrogacy laws. To her, I was still just the girl who refused to wear the belly vest with gratitude. "She's wasting a perfectly good womb," she'd mutter to the neighbors while handing out baked goods with Camilla's latest baby photos tucked in between the muffins. Such a shame. Her sister has blessed 4 families. Meanwhile, this one hoards her eggs like they're gold. I tried to distance myself. I moved to a tiny apartment in D.C., cut calls short, skipped holiday dinners. But Gloria was always watching. Online, through family, even driving up to surprise me outside my office building. So I played along. Not fully, just enough to keep her off my back. I started wearing looser clothes to family events. stopped correcting people when they made comments about future kids. I even Googled a few fertility clinics while sitting next to her at lunch, knowing full well she'd peek over my shoulder and smile with satisfaction. But while she saw a daughter slowly coming around, I was secretly preparing for something else. Something bigger than escape. Because I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to expose everything she built. I should have known the dinner wasn't about Camila's birthday. The invitation was last minute, sent in our family group chat with a photo of a candlelit table and the words, "Come celebrate Camila's latest blessing. Family only." I almost didn't go, but something in my gut told me to show up, to see for myself just how far Mom would push this tradition. The dinner was held at a rented event room in a local vineyard. Very elegant, very curated. Soft lighting, white tablecloths, tiny party favors that looked suspiciously like fertility charms. Camilla sat glowing, literally glowing, with her 5th pregnancy. Her dress clung to her massive belly, and she was surrounded by floral arrangements and a framed ultrasound. I arrived late on purpose, hoping to just drop in, say congrats, and leave. But the moment I stepped into that room, everything felt off. Too quiet, too expectant. Camilla stood to greet me with trembling hands, her eyes glassy. "I'm so glad you came, Izzy. Really." I gave her a careful hug, but something in her body was tense. Her grip lingered, and then Mom appeared behind her. "Sweetheart," Gloria said softly, "we're so proud of how far you've come. You've been thinking about motherhood more, haven't you?" I nodded slowly, wary. "Sure. Thinking." She smiled. "That's why we've decided to help you take the next step." Before I could ask what that meant, she reached into her purse and pulled out a syringe. A real, gleaming syringe filled with a cloudy substance. "Just a little boost to kickstart those eggs," she said gently. "We've already spoken to a clinic that works with motivated women. You won't even have to carry it, just donate your eggs. Such a small thing for such a huge gift." I backed away instantly, my chest tightening. "Mom, what the hell are you doing?" Camilla moved behind me and grabbed my arms. "Please, just try it," she whispered. "You'll feel it, Izzy. That purpose. I've already picked the perfect couple. They're teachers. So kind." I thrashed, panic clawing its way up my throat. "Let go of me!" But Mom was already moving fast. Too fast for someone her age. The syringe plunged into my thigh. Cold fire spread through my muscle. I screamed, everything blurred. My heart pounded like it wanted out of my chest. My vision swam, the lights above spinning. In the haze, I heard Mom on the phone. "Yes, we've administered the first dose. She'll be ready for harvesting in 2 weeks." Harvesting. That's when I knew. This wasn't about family pressure anymore. This was trafficking. The next thing I remember is waking up in the ICU with my abdomen cramping and my throat raw from screaming. The fluorescent lights buzzed. My wrists were bruised. Mom sat in the corner, calmly flipping through a magazine. "We only brought you here to preserve your uterus," she said without looking up. I pressed the red button on the call device. The nurse came in seconds later, took one look at Mom, and immediately asked her to leave. Then she leaned in, checked my vitals, and whispered something I'll never forget. "You're not the first," she said. "If you're willing to talk, I'll help you make them pay." They moved fast. Too fast for it to be a coincidence. By morning, I was no longer in the ICU. I was in the psychiatric ward. The room smelled of bleach and despair. White walls, one narrow window with frosted glass, and a camera mounted in the corner, blinking red every 5 seconds. My clothes were gone. My phone was gone. The nurse told me they had been taken for safety. I demanded to speak with hospital administration, a lawyer, anyone. But I was informed I'd been placed under a 72-hour psychiatric hold following a violent episode and delusional break. Violent? Delusional? I hadn't even screamed until the needle pierced my thigh. But they had a narrative now. Gloria had built it carefully and handed it to them in a folder labeled Concerned Family History. Dr. Elena Whitmore was the appointed psychiatrist. She walked in wearing a perfectly pressed cream suit, silver hair pulled into a chignon, and a calm, neutral smile. I recognized her. She used to come to our house for book club. Now she stood beside my hospital bed, flipping through a chart and pretending she didn't know me. "Isabella," she said warmly, "your mother tells me you've been under a great deal of stress regarding fertility. I'm here to help." I looked over her shoulder and saw it, already printed. A psychological evaluation with my name on it. I hadn't even spoken to her yet. "Detective Luis Ramirez," a familiar voice interrupted from the doorway. He stepped inside, nodded at me, then turned to Whitmore. "Patient is involved in an ongoing criminal investigation. She remains under my supervision." Dr. Whitmore didn't flinch. "Of course. But if she requires police presence during a medical interview, I'll have to note that as a symptom of psychotic paranoia." Luis clenched his jaw. He glanced at me. I nodded faintly. He stepped outside. She sat. For the next hour, she asked me pointed questions. Had I ever fantasized about motherhood? Did I feel persecuted by maternal figures? Did I often confuse concern with control? Every time I pushed back, she smiled and jotted something down. Projection, delusion, obsession. I mentioned the forced injection. She said, "Your mother told me it was a vitamin." I told her about the hallucination-like cramps, the burn. She said, "Ovarian stimulation can cause intense emotional swings. You may be experiencing exaggerated somatic memories." I realized something then. She wasn't here to evaluate me. She was here to confirm the narrative. That night, a nurse I didn't recognize entered quietly. Her badge read, M. Dorsey. She adjusted my IV, glanced at the camera, then leaned close. "You need to be careful," she whispered. "They're building a case against you. Emails, notes from coworkers, photos of you struggling. It's everywhere." I swallowed hard. "How do you know?" She hesitated. "Because I saw it happen to my sister. Same clinic, same tactics, she didn't make it out." Before I could ask what that meant, the door opened and she vanished into the hallway like smoke. I sat in that white room, listening to the hum of the lights, the click of the door locking from the outside. And for the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't just up against my mother. I was up against an entire system designed to call women crazy the moment they stopped saying yes. The next morning, I was handed a plastic tray with watery eggs, dry toast, and a paper cup of pills. "Just something mild for anxiety," the nurse said. I palmed the pills, smiled faintly, and pretended to swallow. As soon as she left, I flushed them down the tiny toilet in the corner of the room. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't trust anyone except maybe Detective Ramirez and the nurse who whispered about her sister. Everyone else either worked for the system or had been devoured by it. The therapy sessions started immediately. Group therapy first. 6 women sat in a circle under the humming fluorescent lights. Most were young, some barely out of their teens. A therapist with a too eager smile and a clipboard asked us to explore our femininity. When it was my turn, I said nothing. The therapist offered a gentle prompt. "Isabella is working through a complicated relationship with motherhood. Sometimes that can manifest as control issues or career fixation." A girl beside me, no older than 19, looked at me with sympathy. "I get it," she said. "I used to think I didn't want kids either. But therapy helped me realize I was just afraid. Not broken." I wanted to scream. Not wanting children wasn't a flaw. It wasn't fear, it was a choice. But screaming would prove their point. So I nodded. That afternoon, Gloria arrived during visitor hours. She brought a suitcase. "I brought you something comfy," she chirped, laying it on the bed. "And look, Camilla's latest baby photos. Look how happy she is." She began unpacking maternity clothes, prenatal vitamins, a pink-covered journal titled My Fertility Journey already filled in with entries written in handwriting eerily similar to mine. She held up a framed ultrasound. "I thought this would help ground you. The retrieval is next week. Dr. Salinas is optimistic. Your hormone levels are responding beautifully." "I didn't consent to that," I said. She smiled as if I'd told a joke. "Of course not, honey. Not while you're still unwell. That's why I've filed for temporary medical conservatorship. She pulled out a thick folder of legal paperwork, some with forged signatures, others twisted just enough to look legitimate. Your coworkers wrote letters, she added, her voice syrupy. They've noticed your fixation with fertility lately. All those pro bono cases, your passion for reproductive justice. It's clear you've been crying out for help. I stared at the woman who birthed me and felt nothing but ice. She was rebuilding my psychiatric room into a nursery. A framed photo of Camilla's family. A stuffed elephant mobile. A tiny knitted blanket. The message was clear. She wouldn't stop until she turned me into Camilla 2.0. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bed was stiff, the lights too bright. The crying from down the hall never stopped. Around midnight, an older nurse entered quietly. She looked worn with tired eyes and graying curls tucked under a surgical cap. I don't have long, she whispered. But I knew the nurse who tried to help you. She asked me to give you this. She pressed a tiny folded note into my palm and slipped away. When I unfolded it in the bathroom later, it was just a phone number. No name, no message, but it was hope. I memorized the digits, tore the paper to shreds, and flushed them one by one. If anyone found it, they'd call it evidence of delusion. But I knew better. I wasn't losing my mind. I was surviving it. And tomorrow, I'd start playing their game. The next morning, I woke up with a mission. If the only way out was through performance, then I'd give them a show so convincing it would leave no room for doubt. During group therapy, I raised my hand for the first time. I think I'm starting to understand, I said softly, letting my voice crack just enough. All these years, I told myself I didn't want kids, but maybe I was just afraid of not being good enough. The therapist lit up like a Christmas tree. That's an incredible breakthrough, Isabella. Let's explore that. I nodded and let the tears come. Not real ones, but just enough moisture to look sincere. I used my career to hide. It was easier to focus on law and justice than to admit I felt empty. Even the girl beside me, the one who had talked about her own healing, reached over and squeezed my hand. It sickened me, but it worked. Later that afternoon, Dr. Whitmore summoned me for a one-on-one. She watched me carefully as I sat down, folding my hands in my lap like a repentant schoolgirl. I owe you an apology, I began. Her eyebrows lifted. You were right, I said. I've been using my work to avoid my real feelings. I think I do want to be a mother. I just didn't want to admit it. Dr. Whitmore nearly glowed. That's such a healthy realization. I told her about a dream I made up. Me holding a baby, feeling whole. I asked about the egg retrieval process. I said I wanted to talk to Camila to ask how she found peace. It was disgusting, but it got me what I needed. By that evening, Dr. Whitmore told me she was recommending early release. If you continue on this trajectory, she said, smiling like a satisfied sculptor, you may not need the full 72 hours. Your mother has already scheduled your first consultation at New Bloom Fertility tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow, the same time as the conservatorship hearing, of course. Gloria wasn't just trying to control me. She was trying to replace me. The next morning, I dressed in one of the flowing maternity dresses Mom had left. I rubbed my flat stomach the way Camilla used to, pausing dramatically in front of the mirror. Mom arrived at 9 a.m. sharp with flowers and a gift bag. You look so natural in that dress, she beamed. See, I knew you'd come around. I smiled and hugged her. I'm sorry I fought you, I whispered. She pulled back, eyes shining. You were just scared, but I've always known you were meant for more. We got into her car. The clinic was across town. On the way, I said, could we stop at my apartment first? I just want to change into something fresh before the appointment. I want to look perfect for the couple. She hesitated, then nodded. Of course, sweetie. That's such a thoughtful idea. When we arrived, I let her follow me inside. Didn't want to raise suspicion, but the moment I got to the bathroom, I locked the door and pulled out the burner phone I'd hidden under the sink. I dialed the number I had memorized from the nurse's note. A woman picked up. "This is Isabella Moreno," I whispered. "My mother is taking me to New Bloom Fertility. The conservatorship hearing is in less than 3 hours. I have documents. I have proof. Can you help?" "We're already there," she said. "We filed an emergency motion, but we need you in court. Can you get there?" "I'll try," I whispered. I hung up and flushed the toilet, then opened the door. Mom was in the living room, replacing my law books on the shelf with parenting guides she'd brought in a separate bag. She looked up. "Ready?" I smiled sweetly. More than ever. But in my chest, my heart pounded like a drum. I had 2 hours left. 2 hours to make it to court. 2 hours to take my life back. The waiting room at New Bloom Fertility looked like a luxury spa. Soft pastel walls, abstract paintings, the scent of lavender pumped through the vents. Women in designer athleisure sat flipping magazines, trying not to look anxious. A couple in the corner held hands and whispered about embryo viability. I sat there, pretending to be one of them. Mom stood at the reception desk, chatting familiarly with the nurse. "Isabella Moreno," she said with pride. "Our first consultation today." She's eager. The nurse smiled at me like I was a cake ready for slicing. They led me to the back past rows of closed doors. "Just some routine hormone checks," the nurse chirped. "Then you'll meet the couple." The moment I sat in the blood draw chair, I made my move. "I need the restroom," I said, clutching my stomach. "Now." She blinked. I feel like I'm going to pass out, please." They relented. She showed me to the nearest bathroom. I locked the door, counted to 3, slipped out the window. It wasn't big, just wide enough for a desperate woman who refused to be harvested. I dropped into a hedge behind the clinic, brushed myself off, and sprinted barefoot to the end of the street. I had ditched my phone earlier, but a rideshare I'd scheduled through a secure web app pulled up 2 minutes later. "Courthouse," I gasped as I climbed in. "Downtown, now." The driver glanced at my dress, then at my scratched arms. "Bad appointment?" "Something like that." We made it across the city in 20 minutes. I arrived at the courthouse at 2:25 p.m. The hearing had already started. I burst through the double doors, dress wrinkled, hair wild, barefoot and sweating. The judge paused mid-sentence and looked up. "Miss Moreno?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said, breathless. "I am here of my own free will, and I contest this conservatorship." My mother froze in her seat. Her lawyer turned slowly toward me, eyes narrowed. My colleague, Naomi Hale, stood and smiled. "Your Honor, this is my client. We have documentation to present." The judge gestured. "Proceed." The next hour felt like war. Mom's lawyer laid out Dr. Whitmore's glowing psychiatric report. She recited my supposed confessions of fertility grief, my sudden breakthrough, my request to donate eggs. I let them talk. Then Naomi stood. She produced the forged consent documents with altered signatures. She presented screenshots of fake emails sent from my hacked account to fertility clinics. She read text exchanges where Mom scheduled appointments under my name without my knowledge. And then she handed over a flash drive. On this drive is security footage showing my client being forcibly injected at a private family event without medical supervision, Naomi said calmly. "We also have sworn testimony from 2 medical professionals who suspect a pattern of reproductive coercion involving multiple women at New Bloom, one of whom was recently terminated for trying to intervene." The judge sat back. "Miss Moreno," he said, "do you wish to address the court?" I stood, shaky but clear. "I don't have fertility grief," I said. "I have a mother who's built her identity around controlling her daughters' bodies, who taught us that our worth began and ended with reproduction. I've spent my career fighting for women trapped in these exact situations. And when I said no, she tried to erase my autonomy, legally, medically, emotionally." Mom finally broke. Tears poured down her face as she clutched her pearls. "I just wanted to be a grandmother. Is that so wrong?" "You have 5 grandchildren," I said, voice flat. "From Camila, who can barely walk now because you destroyed her body." "She wanted that life," Gloria screamed. "Or maybe," I replied, You conditioned her to believe she had no other option. The room fell into silence. The judge tapped his pen against his pad. I have reviewed the evidence. The petition for conservatorship is denied, he declared. Mom let out a sob. Furthermore, the judge continued, a restraining order is hereby granted. Miss Gloria Moreno is to have no legal, medical, or physical contact with Isabella Moreno pending further investigation. I almost collapsed. Naomi grabbed my arm, steadying me. As we exited the courtroom, I saw Camilla in the parking lot. She was struggling to get out of her minivan, her belly swollen again, this time with her 6th pregnancy. 5 toddlers squirmed in their car seats behind her. How could you do this? She called out, eyes glassy with tears. Mom loves us. She believes in us. No, I said quietly. She believes in what our bodies can do for her. Her 6-year-old daughter, Sophia, peeked out from the van window. Her eyes locked with mine. She looked confused, scared. And I knew right then what I had to do. 3 weeks passed before I heard from her. It was a Tuesday morning. I had just filed a formal complaint with the Texas Medical Board against Dr. Whitmore and New Bloom Fertility. Naomi and I were preparing to launch a civil suit when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hi, Aunt Isabella? My heart stopped. Sophia? I whispered. Yeah, I used my friend's phone from school. Grandma says I'm not allowed to talk to you. She says you're dangerous. I sat down slowly. Well, I'm glad you called anyway. Are you okay? A pause, then a soft, trembling voice. Mommy's sick again, real sick. The doctor said she can't have more babies. Grandma was mad. She kept saying how much time we wasted on this one. I closed my eyes. Sophia continued. She keeps saying how special I am, that I'm strong like Mommy, that when I grow up I'll get to help other people too, but I don't want to. My throat tightened. You don't have to, sweetheart. You promise? I smiled even though she couldn't see it. I promise. You can be anything you want to be. Doctor, teacher, astronaut, or nothing anyone tells you. You decide. Silence. Then in a whisper, I want to be a lawyer, like you. My chest ached in the best way. Good for you, I said. Stand your ground, okay? You don't owe your body to anyone. She giggled, then hushed herself. I gotta go before Grandma catches me. And just like that, the line went dead. But it was enough. Weeks later, Camilla showed up at a funeral we both attended, one of our father's distant cousins. She arrived in a wheelchair, thin and pale, her skin waxy. The toll of 6 pregnancies had stolen nearly everything from her. I expected her to look away, to avoid me like always, but this time she didn't. She met my eyes, didn't smile, didn't speak, but she looked. Really looked. And for a moment I didn't see the woman Mom had molded. I saw my sister. The girl who used to sneak into my bed during thunderstorms and whisper silly jokes until we fell asleep. Maybe there was something left to save. Maybe not. But Sophia had already made her choice. Months passed. The investigation into New Bloom uncovered a disturbing pattern. Dozens of women from faith-based support groups or conservative family networks coerced into egg donation or surrogacy under thinly veiled threats of abandonment or sin. The clinic was shut down pending trial. Mom tried to reach me through every avenue, distant cousins, church friends, even my old childhood priest. Each time I blocked her. Each time I documented the contact for the restraining order. I started speaking publicly about reproductive coercion. I gave talks, testified again, helped women who reminded me of Camila, women whose autonomy had been rewritten as instability, women whose families had turned their wombs into battlegrounds. Then, one spring afternoon, I was leaving a seminar at the University of Texas when a young woman approached me outside. You're Isabella Moreno, right? Yes. You helped my friend escape her family. They were trying to make her carry a child for her sister. She said you saved her. I nodded, stunned. She told me everything. and I just wanted you to know I was supposed to start hormone injections next week. My mom's been planning it for 2 years. But after seeing what happened to you, after reading your story, I packed a bag. I'm running instead. She handed me a small note with just a first name and a burner phone number. Call me if I need help? She asked. Always, I said. She left with purpose in her steps. I stood there holding that paper like it was gold. The cycle wasn't gone, but it had cracked. And from the cracks, light was getting in. That night, my phone buzzed again. It was Sophia. Grandma says I'm going to be a wonderful mother someday. I told her I want to be a lawyer like you instead. She got really mad. I typed back with steady hands. Good. Let her be mad. You're not hers, you're yours, the war wasn't over. It never really ends when family is involved. But the battles, some of them, I was finally winning. And that had to be enough for now.